Hi everyone and welcome to the Financial Fox. Today on the show we are talking about gold, what is going to happen to the gold price, the gold market, gold investment opportunity as we are wrapping up 2022 and we are entering 2023. So what is going to be up for gold? Is there an asset that is going to be more exciting next year? Joining me is Rob Kientz, President of Gold Silver Pros, and Mark Child, CEO at Condor Gold. Before we get into the interview, remember that there is no financial advice on this channel. So all the content is for informational purposes only. So any investment decision that you make, you need to do your own research and take your responsibility. Is your money, is your investment decision and your risks. Also, if you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, click the subscribe button now and follow us on social media to stay up to date with our news and interviews. If you have got any comment, please reach out to me at Steffy at financialfox.news or add your comment in the comment section in the YouTube channel. I hope you enjoy this conversation. I would like to start maybe looking at 2022, which has been a year of uncertainty, especially coming out of COVID with the central bank monetary policy. Then we had the energy crisis, political uncertainty, and that has kind of impacted the gold industry from a price perspective, but also from a production perspective. So I would like to kind of, both of you, to kind of share some thought of what you think 2022 has been, and then we can look beyond.
Yeah, so from my perspective, looking back at 2022, I think gold and silver actually held up pretty well. There was, I feel, a large sort of margin call or liquidity event that happened across the markets. We certainly saw pressure in the Dow, the S&P, the NASDAQ. Bond rates have been going up, which is not good for existing bondholders. It drives down the value of their holdings, so we don't like to always see that. And so a lot of the markets were not as ebullient and not as strong as they've been in the past. But gold and silver here look like they're going to end up the year even slightly up. They were down until the last couple of weeks in which we've seen some support in both the gold and silver price. So I think we're going to end the year very positive. And I think if you're, a Bitcoin investor or a stock investor, a bond investor, you may be feeling the pain right now. But if you had been in precious metals this year, you actually held up okay, and probably, no worse for the wear for having done that. So I think this year's been really good for gold and silver and proving that there's still assets that people flock to in times of uncertainty, and certainly I think this year they proved that.
Yeah, no, I would endorse that, and let's not forget gold's a $12 trillion currency, and if it's up 10% in sterling terms, it's not just the US dollar we should look at. And if you're holding Turkish lira, it's up 60% if you put your money into gold, and you were based in Turkey at the beginning of the year. So yes, it's been a good diversification asset for everyone. My comment probably should be from what's 2022 been like for the gold producers and explorers. Despite a gold price being pretty steady and trading in a narrow range, there's been the share prices haven't done really at all well. And part of that has been linked in with inflation, the concern that investors have on the producing companies if they're going to build anything new of capex blowouts. So there's been a number of examples of that over the year where projects have actually had their capex blow out significantly, 50%, cost overruns and so on. So that doesn't help. And the other side is the operating margins have been squeezed generally. So you've had operating costs go up because in the mining sector, roughly 25 to 30% of the operating costs are linked in with power for running the SAG mills and plants, and fuel, diesel and so on for actually running the operating costs for mining fleets and so on. So, and then you've got wages going up and so on, and raw materials. So there's been a margin squeeze to some extent within the producers, and that's had a knock-on effect into the development sector. So I think it's probably fair to say that although the balance sheets are in great shape now, for the production companies, the share prices have disappointed relative to where the gold price has been.
Okay, if we look at the role of gold as a safe haven asset, as a preserve of wealth for investors. My question would be, is that challenge, because there were conversation about how Bitcoin is going to be the new gold, is the long-term function of gold challenged by Bitcoin?
I guess I'll jump on that one real quick because I own both. So I do some Bitcoin mining. It's not one of my primary investments. I do it as a speculation. So I've been involved in that market for a while. And of course in gold and silver for a very long time. And I do think in the last cycle, Bitcoin did get a lot of attention. I think we saw early on cannabis stocks are doing very well. That was maybe a bit more of a fad until that market got saturated. But Bitcoin continued to do well. And not only that, but now, Steffy, we have over 20,000 cryptocurrencies. So it's not just Bitcoin. There's a whole complex of cryptocurrencies out there. Obviously, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Monero, those types dominate the market. And they did capture a lot of attention. And I think they did take some money away from the space. I think in the last cycle, we didn't see as much investment in the resource stocks as we typically have, for example. And so I do think that there is sort of an either or factor. There is a limited amount of money in the world, and investors are going to go to what they have interest in and what they think is going to do well. And I do think that some of that money that may have gone into the gold sector has gone into Bitcoin. The interesting thing to see will be what is the messaging coming out of the gold sector. Is the gold sector going to rally around and say, hey, we did better than Bitcoin this last year. Look at the value that gold really has. We've proven our point of this 5,000-year history as a monetary asset and safe haven. And that should be the messaging out of the gold sector. And I think if the gold sector goes to that messaging, then I think people will respond. And I think people will come back to gold and silver. But it's really the messaging. I think, honestly, the Bitcoin community is very good at messaging, and it's something the gold community probably could take a page out of their book just a little bit.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think people should have both, is the agreement in the sense of but just with the leaders on the crypto, I mean, just if you want Bitcoin per se, rather than something number 100th in size, but both are a store of value, but you could argue that something that's down 60% from its high this year is actually much more of a speculative instrument than actually a store of value. I certainly would, and central banks aren't going to buy it in many parts of the world anytime soon, but they'll be prohibited from it, and they'll set up their own digital currencies and so forth, which they're doing in China and many countries around the world. So I'm slightly skeptical on it rivaling it, but I think you could certainly have both in your portfolio. I would say that the gold market has a huge amount to learn from marketing. And it's fragmented. There's no single voice for the gold market. The World Gold Council is the trade body that sort of represents it, but it's lame completely. What is going to happen though, I think, with gold is that they're very slowly digitalizing it. So if you look at Tether Gold, for example, which you can go Google and look at, that's like Tether US dollar staple coins, but actually gold back, 1-for-1 in gold held in Zurich for it. Now that's the beginning, I think, of the way that gold will go forward. So if I was to look out 5 years from now, I would see gold being like a staple coin, totally gold backed, as a transferable digital currency outside of the banking system, because that's what people are really betting on, isn't it? So and the World Gold Council has started a program on this, and I was at a conference recently where you had the heads of the main mining companies in the world. I'm talking Newmont, the biggest in the States, Barrick, the second biggest in the States, sitting there saying, we have to get this message across and digitalize gold, being asset backed by gold in a vault somewhere, but they are looking at ways in which to do it. They haven't decided whether it's all going to be Tether Gold or whether it's a new instrument, but you can bet your bottom dollar they're hurting. They're seeing the retail investor much prefer Bitcoin because that's speculative money that was in exploration and in gold, and let's go make 10 baggers out of this, has found its way into the crypto space, and people have made, until the recent collapse, have made 10, 100 times their money. So that kind of risk-on money that finds its way into Gold Explorers that I run has definitely found its way into some of the crypto side. But I think slowly the giant of the gold market, this $12 trillion currency, is going to get digitalized. And I'm completely convinced about that. How it actually happens is going to materialize, I'm unsure, and maybe Rob's got a view on it, but you could well find a lot of people are able to pay with the currency gold, which they can't readily do now in a digital format, in 5 years' time. And that would mean a lot of demand for gold, by the way, if it all has to be physically gold backed. I think if that scenario happens, gold's 4,000. in that
That's
time,
such an
quite
interesting
easily.
point, Mark, and I'm really glad that you brought it up because it is about tokenization of assets, and that's where the industry is going, and I'm sure that commodity is going to go in that direction. But yeah, it's kind of Rob. What are your views on that on this topic? How gold is going to be tokenized, and also I think another point that is very important is about regulation. That now is the main, is the main topic in the crypto space and is very important for mass adoption, but also for kind of making this tokenization of assets a reality.
Mm. Yeah, I think if you look at tokenization, I think everything in the world eventually will probably be tokenized. If you look at efforts like the Chinese, they are really big on smart contracts, and when you tie smart contracts, which are electronic contract, just like a contract, but it's electronic, it's tied to the blockchain, and you tokenize an asset class like T. I think they started with T and made a T token. They've tokenized their T, and that token in the smart contract is what governs that transaction, and it has a tremendous boon for a functioning economy. It makes things faster, it guarantees quality, it leads to instantaneous settlement of contracts, it keeps things out of the court system. It does a lot of positive things. And I think that tokenizing gold makes a lot of sense. I think Mark is correct. And I think companies like Kinesis have started to do that. Loadcoin, those types of precious metals backed digital coins that are not really like Bitcoin currency. It's more towards like a stable coin, although they're backing with precious metals. And I think that is a big part of the industry. And I think getting the newer generations into gold and silver, that's a pathway to do it because they like the electronic trade, they understand it, they're online, it makes sense with them. And like my kids, for example, really are interested in these types of products and getting into gold and silver, for example, in their generation. And I think if you look at the history of mine finance, because mining is so cyclical, especially the precious metals is a very cyclical market in terms of price and investment. But a lot of things have happened along the way to kind of help the miners out. There was the royalty streaming model, which brought them money. They had to give up value to do it, but it brought them money when they couldn't get it themselves. And now I think that I've spoken with companies that are like, how do we do like an option on our metal? There's a major company building a mine in Mexico that says we don't want to sell our silver because we're not going to get enough at this market price. But what if we make an option product out of it? And so they're looking to basically, I think the final destination of that will be tokenizing their silver. And so I think that individual miners are now looking at how do we get more value out of our asset.
Well, you're bringing an interesting point in about how do you finance mines going forward. Actually, it's another area, isn't it? I mean, what's the future of mine finance going to look like? Because I agree with you. I think it's going to move on from streams, which basically give away the upside that the equity shareholders have worked so hard to create, to somebody on a zero risk product, basically by taking it out of the margin at the expense of the equity holders. So I think it's going to move massively, Rob, into tokenization. So, for example, the people at Tether and Tether Gold, and I'm not under a CA with them, I've had a call with them, and they see we've got 2.4 million ounces of gold. They say, look, you can build a mine producing 100,000 ounces of gold a year. We'd like the physical. And what about the old-fashioned gold loan, but actually it's done via Tether Gold, so it's digitalized in terms of repayment. So, would we, as a company, if we could do it, would we take 50, 60, 70 million dollars worth of Tether Gold today and repay that back in physical gold out of production over the life of a loan? So you could have tokenized loans and that whole area being opened up to anybody in the world. If the regulators let me do it, which they might not, being London and Toronto listed, but I can see a big change happening in mine finance if people are acute about it.
That's such an interesting topic. So we can kind of like make the gold industry more innovative and younger as well, because when you're talking to young investors, that's what you said, Rob. They said, oh, gold, no, it's old, we prefer Bitcoin. But actually,
Well, all you're doing, Steffi, is you're taking the old-fashioned gold loan. When the British were building mines in South Africa 250, 300 years ago and financing them, which is what we did, it was done via a gold loan. Money was lent down, secured on the asset, secured on the mine, and it was repaid in physical gold back in London. Now, you're just going to use the same old... And that's why mines got put up in all different parts of the world, from war-torn, striven places, political regimes, because people were getting the metal back, the physical metal. I see the same thing being tokenized and happening in gold loans via tokenized. system through maybe tether gold, as I say. I'm not sure, but I see that being a future.
Okay. Well, let's see what the future is going to bring to us. And thank you so much for being on the show. I think it was a great conversation. And I look forward to see what 2023 brings to gold and to innovation as well.